tune.
And welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast. We are live right now. And joining me in the studio is none other Cody Sparks from the Cody Sparks Band. We can't actually see him, but we have to believe he's there.
Yeah, we're here.
And then we also have Holland Gregg from Eastside Community Church.
Greetings.
And he is here. And then the woman who does not have a zit on her forehead.
Not alive.
It is Adrian joining us with a burn mark on her forehead. Do not judge her. That would be, we couldn't handle that.
No.
How's the head, Adrian?
It's just a little burn. I got a little burn right where you would think that there would be a zit. But don't worry, there's only a few
Is
wrinkles.
it like worse to have a zit than to have like a burn?
Yeah, zit's worse than burn.
Does that say like you don't take care of yourself?
Zit's
A
like...
burn's just like an accident. That can happen to anyone.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. Zit probably means that you have personal problems.
Oh, okay.
Still brave of you to come here
Thank
today,
you.
though.
Yeah, you really
taking one for the
Holland did
team.
recommend you wear a hat, and you just said no. I'm just going
Yeah,
full
I
burn.
said I'm just going to be proud.
Okay, well,
of
way
the
to go.
face
Well,
that God
you
gave me.
guys, listen, we were sitting here talking about what we were actually going to talk about, and the audience, the live studio audience, all called out, we want to hear about the executive order that Donald Trump just signed about the two-gender status. Holland, can you give us a quick review of what he just signed and what that means?
So Donald Trump is now the president of the United States.
He is now the president, yes.
And he started off signing a bunch of executive
Did
orders.
he do this at the Capital One building? Is that where he started signing stuff, or was that today?
He's yesterday.
At the Capital One arena, he was just signing up a storm?
No, I don't think it was at the arena.
Because I saw him have a desk there, so I assumed it would
Maybe.
be.
I consumed a lot of information yesterday.
Did you consume did he go back to the Oval Office or
I
something?
saw him in the Oval Office with a bunch of executive orders.
Oh,
But
nice.
No,
Okay.
I believe he did it also, like you said, live in front of however many thousands of people.
He did do it
Yeah.
live on his way out of the inauguration.
Yeah, because it
swearing.
seemed like a huge waste of a Donald Trump moment because he knows how to capture, like, here's the one executive order you've been waiting for me to sign.
So he did do that, and I don't know about it being in front of the arena
Okay.
versus...
Live executive order signings is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Very awesome. Like, you can go, I was there. Okay, so what was the executive order on
Okay.
gender?
So here's one of them. Yeah. Starts off, I'm just going to read some of it. And it says, Section 1, purpose. Across the country, ideologues who deny the biological reality of sex have increasingly used legal and other socially coercive means to permit men to self-identify as women and gain access to intimate single-sex spaces and activities designed for women, from women's domestic abuse shelters to women's workplace showers. This is wrong. Efforts to eradicate the biological reality of sex fundamentally attack women by depriving them of their dignity, safety, and well-being. The erasure of sex in language and policy has a corrosive impact not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system. Basing federal policy on truth is critical to scientific inquiry, public safety, morale, and trust in government itself. Okay, and then he goes on talking for a little while, and then he starts, it gets into Section 2, policy and definitions. Okay, here's what I think is really interesting.
Okay, here we go.
He's going to define, woman and man and male and female and sex and gender and stuff. But in the definition, everyone knew this part was coming too. He
Right.
said he was going to do this. But in the definition, he actually defines personhood as beginning at conception.
Oh, wow.
Which is, so like in terms of like, not just impacting transgender stuff, but also the abortion issue.
Sure.
Because what some people would say is like, okay, you can say life begins at conception. Sure, that's a human life, but it doesn't have personhood.
Right.
And that's where, a person is someone who has constitutional rights.
And hasn't Trump, like, sort of backed off the abortion thing?
Yes.
And
Well,
now this seems like a reversal, and it's like full charge, 1,000% head. Or do you think he knew what he was doing?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's not a explicit, so like he backed off in like the
When you could get an abortion.
what's it called? Yes. he basically said, I'm trying to think of the name for it. It's online. It's where, they
Is
give
it late-term abortions or like early-term?
No. I'm talking about where they list out like their policies, their party platform. Platform. So in the Republican Party platform, the one that he made last year, it was way less detailed, way more brief, and it basically just said like we're against late-term abortions.
Right.
So he backed off big time. And no one really knew where he was going to go. And this isn't like an explicit like recanting of that. It's actually just something embedded implicitly in an anti-transgender deal.
Yeah.
So what it says here is like female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. And male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. So defining male and female based on sex from conception and calling that a person, even at conception. So I think that's huge.
That is huge.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the reason why I think that's huge is because now you could argue the reason why. Now, granted, this is an executive order, and so I don't necessarily think it holds the weight of law, but it does go the right direction. I think the only part that's problematic with executive orders, as everybody knows, they can be reversed in 4 years or whenever someone is no longer in office. And the other problem with it, it's not a law, but it is going the right direction. It is giving a definition that the government is going to go by, because all the other insanity definitions that Biden gave over the past 4 years on gender was like, there is no gender. You can mark X for neutral or whatever you want. Not X as like X, Y, or whatever, but it's you can mark whatever you wanted for a gender. And that was a legally accepted document. Whereas now you cannot. It's either male or female, and I think that's a positive thing for truth. Not just for Christianity, although I'm obviously for Christianity, I'm for all that, but I just think for society as a whole to believe in science again, which I think is sort of wild to say, but like kind of like say it's not a feeling that is your sex, it's an actual reality.
Yeah, when he stood up and said like there will only be two genders now, and everyone cheered, you're like, whoa, how crazy did things get that people are cheering for that statement?
Right.
Which is like one of the most basic,
Yeah. 100 years ago, if someone said there is only male and female, everyone been like,
right. Yeah. Like, okay.
What else? But for that to be like the roar of the crowd moment. Adrian, as for you as a woman, let's hear from your perspective of like how that makes you feel as a lady over there who doesn't have to worry about men in your bathrooms. Have you had to worry about men in your bathrooms?
I have not, which is nice, but I've been really grateful not to have a daughter during all this, but this seems like a good direction that we're going, right? And here's the other thing. Let me just talk about what has been on my mind, because you know how the algorithm of Facebook works.
Yeah. I ruined it, so I
all
don't
of
see
my
anything I know.
liberal ACU graduate friends were not ever, they were never in my news feed until yesterday. And then now my whole news feed is them, and they are sending condolences. I was trying to look up one, but they're sending condolences to everyone who feels hopeless now, who feels that hate has won, and that's the verbiage. Is like, we're so sorry that hate has won, intolerance has won. We're so sorry for this world, and they're apologizing on behalf of somebody to a demographic of
it's
hurt
unspecified
people.
that they don't actually know them.
Right. Or maybe they do know some people who are feeling hurt, and then the theology behind their consolation is to let love fill. Let belief is enough. Believes that the loves of seeds of God will multiply, and that it's like they're trying to create some hope that maybe God might be sufficient for the hatred that seemingly permeating, and it's everywhere. And then on top of that, of course, they're doing what they've always done, which is take certain little bitty things out of context and blow them up. And that's irritating and I guess to be expected. But I think what I have been most what is so significant to me is when you tell the world there are two genders, male, female, for that to be...
Should we say the word gender? I mean, is that giving a nod to the weirdo that made up the term gender? Two sexes? But maybe we're so beyond that now, because that word was made up in the 50s.
Okay, sex.
Sorry, and I don't mean to make that a big deal, but like, is that a nod to what's his name that invented the term and his crazy sex tests? Because
you know about that, we don't. Well,
the only reason we watched What Is a Woman, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I learned from that there was the term gender was coined in the 50s, and so we just sort of all adopted it, which then brought this thing which was sort of helpful in some ways, like what gender are you? You know, because whenever I saw sex, back when I was growing up in the 80s, sex, I would write yes, and I think I was so funny. And then,
wow.
But then now it became...
It's very revealing.
Yeah, you're 8 years old and you think you're the funniest person ever. And then what do you got? Sex, yes, please. So
that's the usefulness of gender
is to prevent that 8-year-olds from thinking they're hilarious.
That particular situation. Okay. I see.
That's probably the only place I can see it. It really is helpful, but I don't want to give another nod to the guy that came up with the gender ideology and start calling it that. But I don't want to be over the top either. I'm just wondering if that's a thing.
Yeah, good question.
Listen, I don't know.
Okay, go ahead. Back to your point.
We can just call it. We can call it sex.
Call it sex.
For him to say that there are two sexes, male and female, for that to be perceived as something hateful and intolerant is so interesting to me, because of the same, on the other side of this same coin, you have those same people parenting, right? This gentle parenting that says my child should have no boundaries, and like, let's let the children decide what they're like. When you let the child be the decision maker and the leader of themselves, you have a very unhappy child. Yep. And you can go anywhere in the general public.
Why, would you say this is where the suicide stuff comes from?
Absolutely. Because kids are not, they don't know. They only know what they've been taught, what they've been told. And so being told that your gender's fluid, being told that you're in the car, you're in the driver's seat, and anyone that's raised kids knows this. Like, I mean, we've had our battles with food at our house, right? People don't want to eat the food that we're giving them, like every kid probably. But so what's the most natural?
Probably not at Holland's house. They eat everything they're told, right?
They do. Holland's house is superior.
My kids are always obedient with happy hearts, and they never cause any trouble.
That's why we had to have you part-time. Can't do full-time yet. It feels a little too convicting. So part of, like, it's natural as a parent to be like, we just need them to eat food. Like, they need protein, they need food. This will help all of their problems. They'll stop crying, they'll feel better, they'll probably sleep better. So you get to a point where it feels like the most reasonable, loving thing you can do is to be like, what would you like? Here are your choices. Here are the options. What if you could have any food today? What would it be? Let's work with you. Let's put you in the lead. Let's put you as the leader. And then we start negotiating, which we're still doing this at our house.
And I sometimes make this mistake of going, hey, what do you want to eat? And I'm like, oh crap,
no.
That was the dumbest thing I could have ever said.
Right.
I should have said, you're eating pancakes, or you're eating sausage, or here's an egg.
There
Eat
you
it.
go.
Right.
And I fall into that because I treat people
only
like
ask a question if every answer is something you actually want to do.
Right.
There you go.
But it doesn't. The child isn't happy making the choice for themselves, because the minute that they say, "Oh, I want pancakes," you give them pancakes. Well, they don't want those pancakes, or they don't want them cut that way, or they don't want that shape, or they don't want that temperature. I mean, and it's not because the shape, the temperature, the cutting. It's not because those things are a problem. It's because the child is torn between feeling this authority that is more than they can handle, and feeling. And like they're kind of at war internally over the power that they've been given. And any child that's given too much power and too much authority is unhappy. They're unhappy children. And so the fact that we are saying as a nation, here's some boundaries. What we know from parenting is boundaries create contentment. They create a child with 2 Christmas presents, I guarantee you, is more content than the child with 20 on Christmas morning. Because there's probably some parenting that goes behind that teaches some foundational truths and some contentment, because it's not the variety, it's not the options, it's not the power that creates the contentment. And I think what's so mind-blowing to me is that there's Christians out there that feel as though giving the humanity an infinite amount of choices is actually the more loving approach, and it's also the approach that will lead to more satisfied, like healthy, happy people. Like how ignorant are we? How have we gotten to this point where that feels true?
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense. Like, go to Disney World. You don't see more pissed off kids than you do at Disney World. There are no angrier kids.
It's the happiest place on earth, Adrian.
I mean, Chris and it was like we wanted to make a film the whole time we were there. It was just
of everybody
tantrum
crying
after tantrum after tantrum, and it's like you could go to go to Georgetown Blue Hole. Okay, there's very few tantrums. It's just like, it's free. There's rocks, there's dirt.
And we make a lot of great games of throwing rocks and skipping rocks.
It's like children that are given too much. There's just such, and not to say Disney World's bad. Who cares? I mean, I don't care to go, but people can go to Disney World all day long. It's just, there's a very normal phenomenon that happens when children are given too much power
unless
and too
they're
much
parented by the
authority.
Gregs.
Yeah.
Okay. Helen, you
all
can
right.
enlighten us.
I gotta tell you guys something. I don't actually have perfect children.
No,
who are
he
happy
does.
all
I've
the
seen
time.
them. They came to our house and they did nothing wrong. And Lizzie was so sweet and was like acted like an adult the whole time.
She does want to come on the podcast soon, though. By the way,
I would love to have Lizzie. She is tell her
Austin
welcome.
Chris might have told Austin that that's the kind of girl you want to marry someday.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was like, Lizzie is quality right there.
She's
so you might need to start creating some boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries are good. I'm pro boundaries, Adrian.
All right, back to what we're talking about.
I want to hear what Helen was talking.
Yeah.
Oh, what? About what?
Your kids.
Oh, about my kids? I think I was just saying that I don't have perfect kids because you guys keep making this joke, and the podcast listeners need to understand.
They know you. I mean, they recognize you on sight.
What do you think about kids that have too much options, too much authority, too much excessive?
Yeah, I think boundaries are good. Boundaries are healthy with the eating stuff. You know, when my kids say, I don't like that, I say, well, that's, we're going to work on that. You should be able to. I talk about how Jesus sent his disciples out and he told them to go 2 by 2 to the different houses. Yep. What did he say? Eat whatever is
set before you.
Boom.
Oh, do you use that Bible verse with them?
Oh, yeah. Eat whatever's set before you. You know what? Sometimes following Jesus means eating a meal that you don't really like, but you're going to be respectful to your host. And so we're going to train you as children.
Man.
And we want to teach you to have good food. So, I'm 100%.
That is wild.
Unless you're in Mexico and there's ants and such.
What was that, Cody?
Unless you're in Mexico.
You ate ants. Did
I did.
Cody ate ants.
Yeah.
I don't do mission trips anymore. I'm retired.
Yeah, exactly.
The voice of God has spoken.
I think, that idea, that philosophy, I see the connection you're making, Adrian, between the gentle parenting approach and the, total liberal kind of mindset approach toward gender and stuff like that. Is it's just all rules are oppressive. That's the common denominator.
All
rules are oppressive.
Yeah, rules are bad.
Rules are bad. They hurt you. They hold you back. Whereas, the Bible is really clear that rules, God's rules lead to blessing. Whatever he commands, he blesses. His law leads to life, right? Obviously, you cannot find justification and salvation from his law. But as Christians, God's law points us in the direction of life and blessing and abundance and goodness. And so to say there are only 2 genders, only 2 sexes, whatever, male and female, some people, there's a group of people that hear that and it sounds oppressive to them. And what they don't realize is that the reason it sounds oppressive is they've adopted an approach that God's rules are hurtful and oppressive to you. Mm-hmm. Whereas in reality, God's rules are going to lead you to happiness, joy, peace, safety. Boundaries are a good thing. We live in boundaries. We live in a house that has walls and a roof and a door, and that. Boundaries can protect you, not just hinder you.
I think we've been told think outside the box so many times. Everyone just sort of assumes.
Give me the box.
Put me inside the box, and I will work in there.
Well, you want the right boundaries, though. There are boundaries that can be hurtful and legalistic, but to apply that to all rules is foolish.
Yeah, I think greatest way to think about it, in my opinion, is from Jocko Willink, not a Christian, but a guy that's smart. He says discipline equals freedom. And I think that is like something that we can all rally behind, that we need to discipline ourselves. And if we can discipline ourselves, then we can lead an organization like our family. And I think the hard part is, I think people have seen rules as so oppressive for so long that they can't get inside their head. And maybe they remembered that one teacher, one bully, or whatever from their past, and so that all rules are bad because of that one thing. And so,
well, and there's this idea too that like God must we don't serve a God that hates these people, and that's true. Yeah. We don't serve a God that hates people ever, right? But He hates sin, and so loving those people who are struggling to accept the boundary of the gender they were born with, loving those people doesn't look like enabling them to continue in a mindset that is detrimental to them. Just like we don't allow our kids to, like if our kids wanted, I mean, there's just so many things our kids could want that are detrimental. Like playing Switch all day, every day, eating donuts all day, every day. Like it would be detrimental. They would be miserable people. Allowing our kids to never be challenged, never be pushed, never do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. Ultimately, it's just not loving to them. Like we're not setting them up for anything in life successfully when we protect them from every single thing that feels hard to them in the moment. It's loving them to lead them through. The boundary.
But I do think that, let's just be honest, the reason why we're not doing that is that's way harder to put hard boundaries in, and you have to overcome a tantrum, and you have to do it lovingly. You have to, when the tantrum hits, you have to emotively calm down, and we don't all do that well. And again, I think that's why it's so much harder to parent. It's way easier to outsource. And when you outsource parenting, whether it's daycare or school or whatever, you're not going to get that influence into the kid's life where your word is the law and they obey it. And so you have to overcome a lot of 8 hours a day to overcome that, to kind of speak into your kid's life and say, when you are here and when you were with me, this is what you do. And that's
it's hard in the moment. It's hard in the moment, but it's not hard in the long term. And I think that this is exactly the correlation to both ways. Take a person who believes that they are not supposed to be the sex that they were born. Right. It feels easier for them, instead of going and processing with a counselor or whoever why they feel this ostracization between how they're naturally identified, what pain could be there, what questions could be there. Instead of that, it's uncomfortable, it's in the moment to process that, to relive some of the trauma, to vocalize some of the hurt. That hurts in the moment. But what happens is we see videos of what happens when you continue to give into the what feels good now you create this entire world where kids are like actually using litter boxes and actually walking around on leashes, because at what point does...
It's called being a furry.
At what point does giving into what feels good in this moment ever end? Right. It just becomes harder and harder to maintain, and you end up with a much more difficult life with many more obstacles, just like with a kid who... When you just choose to mentally disengage the behavior, which we often do in our house, it just makes your day worse and worse and worse and worse and
until
worse.
It explodes.
Yeah, and so it's like in the moment it's more uncomfortable, but in the next, in the long relatively run. Short term, it gets much easier.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
I think that's where.
So how do we challenge parents? I know we started on gender, we ended up on parenting. I'm not sure how that happened.
To me, it's the same struggle. Like helping a person walk through the struggle is no different than a child. I just think parenting is more. So in other words, applicable.
I think the nation gave up on parenting psycho people that were screaming as men, saying, I am a woman, and eventually I don't have time to mess with you. I don't want to mess with you. I don't care really about you. Be a woman. It's fine. And they didn't think about the ramifications for the rest of society beyond that person's individual liberty to say whatever they want to be. Because once you give somebody the authorization to go from a man to a woman, now you've given them access to bathrooms and access all the things that no one really probably thought through the ramifications of that. We just wanted to have individual liberty.
And why is it that you are resisting your gender? Maybe because something sexually happened to you, right? Maybe that's why. If that is why, allowing you access into bathrooms where you don't belong is setting you up to be a repeat offender to the very trauma that has wrecked your life. And so it's not loving you to give you access. But it's like, so then that's now it's time to put a loving boundary. We're not going to give you access to that bathroom so you can't repeat. It's like the logic makes no sense. And it comes down to like having to, the desires and the feelings in the moment that are sinful and wrong. It's more loving and it's more freeing to acknowledge those for what they are.
Yeah. I mean, the wild thing is in Loudoun County, I think it was like, you had a man transitioned to a woman as a teenager, went to a girl's bathroom, raped a girl. They then moved him from the school, didn't tell the next school. He went to the bathroom, raped another girl. That was like the thing that sort of exploded the thing. Matt Walsh went to Loudoun County and said, we can't do this. This is the most dangerous, crazy thing. And I think eventually the school board reversed course on that. But it was wild to see the thinking and danger that the no boundaries thing, just do whichever you want to do, was put on high school kids whose brains aren't fully developed, who don't know how to function in society, are dealing with hormones and emotions and raging everything. And so to think that they're going to have the mental capacity without boundaries to function in a world, it's going to be a Lord of the Flies. And that's what it was. And I think that's the problem that I think we're facing with our culture. Any final thoughts on that, Holland?
Yeah, I still think I just kind of want to see what's going to happen with the like implicit acknowledgement of personhood at conception too. Yeah. So not just the gender issue, but see how this is going to impact the abortion issue as well. Because if you're defining male and female as a person who belongs to the sex that produces this, what's it called?
Chromosome?
Gamete. How did it word it? Let me see.
Reproductive organ.
Okay. Person. Yeah, belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. So what I'm interested in and what I want to kind of see what happens here is if this definition of personhood beginning at conception really makes an impact on
anyone
totally abolishing abortion, because if it's a person and you end its life, you have just committed murder. And so they may not have realized that when they put it in there. They were trying to be super clear about the gender and sex issues, but without realizing may have put something in there that completely abolishes abortion. So
well,
that's my prayer.
Though, because you could have said at birth.
Right, but they said at conception.
They said at conception, so I don't think that was accidental. At birth is more what you're thinking. When you think of gender, you think, because you discover the gender when they come out of the mother, right? Even the tests beforehand feel kind of iffy. And so the fact that they said conception, that doesn't seem, it seems like the easier accident would have been to say at birth. And so it feels optimistic. And that's the whole Christian argument for why not abortion. Is it has nothing to do with the fact that we're not understanding of the situation these women are placed into. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that this is a child that God has, whose life God has ordained at conception. And so, I mean, man, that would be really interesting.
And it is going against kind of what I have the Republican platform up. It says, we proudly stand for families and life. We believe that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees that no person can be denied life or liberty without due process, and that the states are therefore free to pass laws protecting those rights. Which I think is weird that you'd have to pass a law to protect those rights if they're a federal given right. But that's where I think they get. And after 51 years, because of us, I like that power has been given to the states and to a vote for the people. We oppose late-term abortions while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is, but I feel like the thing that you read and that platform is in conflict a little bit, because they're not leaving it up to the states. They're saying this is a person from conception, which would rule out early abortions.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to be a citizen, you have to be born in the United States. So you're not a citizen yet, but you are a person. So I feel like even laws against murder, you can't just not murder citizens. You can't murder persons.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm curious to see where that'll go.
Yeah, because like if you murdered an illegal alien or something, you'd still
committed murder.
Yeah, you still committed murder. And so it's not just citizenship. Yeah, so it's personhood.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, my prayer is for abortion to be completely abolished. That, we'll see what happens. But,
well, you heard it here first at Pastor Plek's podcast, and we are like reporting on the news pretty much like lightning speed around here sometimes. So we're grateful for everything you guys are. Make sure you text us in, 737-231-0605, or you can leave a comment on Facebook or YouTube. Cody Sparks from the Cody Sparks Band, he's behind the production studio wall. Cody, any thoughts over there from the Cody Sparks Band?
All right.
Did he say no?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for watching. From our house to yours, have an awesome week of worship.